So if we can ground our concepts of action and purpose and meaning in the simplest kind of scenarios, that should give us a better way to understand the most complex scenario that we know of, which is the human mind. Now, when you do that, though, there's a third framing problem, which I think really almost scuppers things from the get-go, which is called determinism. And that's the idea, especially predeterminism, that the low-level laws of physics just predetermine everything that's going to happen, just because everything is made of atoms and molecules and quantum fields, and the way they interact is completely determined by the laws of physics, and there's just one possible future. Now, if you accept that premise, then you end up doing one of two things. Either you dismiss free will, which to me is dismissing the entire fundamental phenomenology of our existence, or you end up tying yourselves in knots, trying to show that moral responsibility can be compatible with that kind of determinism, even when there's no possibility of choosing. There are no possibilities at all, in fact. And that challenge is much worse because it doesn't just rule out free will in humans, it rules out any kind of agency whatsoever in any kind of organism. How could we say that any living being is doing something when everything just unfolds in a predetermined way? Now, thankfully, physics doesn't say that. Physics doesn't say that the universe is determinist in that way. There's fundamental indeterminacy at lots of levels, the quantum level, but also classical levels. So what that means is that the future is radically open. What happens in the universe is underdetermined by just those low-level laws of physics. And if we start from that premise, then we flip the script. We don't need to ask, where does freedom come from? How could there be choice? The freedom comes for free. It's just in the universe. But now we have to ask something else. Given all this indeterminacy in the world and in the noisiness of its own parts, how can an organism control what happens? Of all those possibilities, how can it make happen what it wants to happen? And fortunately, that challenge also presents the solution. Because the fact that the future states of the system, both the organism and the world, are underdetermined by the low-level details, that opens the door for the way the system is organized to have some causal effect. The organization can constrain the possibility space. And there's nothing magic about that idea. It's utterly commonplace. It's what lets us design our artifacts so they can do certain things and have certain functions. And that kind of functional organization is exactly the defining characteristic of living beings. It's why we call them organisms at all, in fact. And it becomes clear if we really think about, well, what is it? What is a living organism? What does that mean to be a living self? And really, it's a set of interlocking processes.